Madison, Robert, thank you so much for joining us to come share with us a little bit of your stories living with cancer. Madison, I know that you experienced cancer at a young age, and you went out and just said you're going to go change the world, and you start this organization. So, tell us what, I asked at the beginning of the last panel what people thought was missing in the community around them in kind of dealing with this. And I'm interested because you went out and did something to do this, but what did you feel was missing that you feel you need as a cancer patient and cancer survivor?
Definitely community, because I was diagnosed when I was 20, and 20 is not the age that you think of when you think of a cancer patient. I remember the day I got diagnosed, my first thought was, I thought this was for old people. I knew nothing about cancer, I knew nothing going into it, and so when I first got diagnosed, it was just kind of all of the treatments that I had were I was at least like 50 years younger, 40 years younger than everybody in the room, and I just felt very out of place. So really that community and that support for young adults.
I read a little bit about your stepdad helped you with Cancer Speak.
Yeah, oh gosh, if I hadn't had my stepdad, I don't think I would have understood half the things that my doctor said to me.
So what is Cancer Speak? I thought it was an interesting term.
Just the verbiage that oncologists will use to explain chemo treatments or radiation or whatever, just the different cells in your body doing this and this. And I had lymphoma, and to this day I can't tell you exactly what it was. It was large B cell, whatever that means, and non-Hodgkin's, whatever that. I just wanted to get it gone.
And tell us about Spark the Way.
So Spark the Way is that community. It's a faith-based community and resource for young adults affected by cancer. So we come in right now, we're working on our mentor program. So we've just collected survivors from around the country. We have one in California, a few in Tampa, one in Georgia, and what they do is we're working on getting their stories posted on our website, so then fighters can go on our website, read their story, and kind of pick which person that they best connect with. So then that person can kind of walk through it with them, so they can have somebody just kind of right in front of them saying, it's okay, I did this, I felt this too, go this route, not this route, don't forget about this, so kind of somebody just holding their hand going through it, because it's everything, no matter what you're struggling with, whether it's cancer, anything, to have somebody in front of you that says, I know how you feel, it just changes everything.
Robert, you are a prostate cancer survivor. Actually, you're living with prostate cancer and,
yes.
and have an adaptive therapy approach. And I'm interested too in this kind of the question of the ecosystem. What do you think we're getting right in a case like yours? What do you think we're not getting right with others who may be dealing with some of the same things you are?
Well, for me, I think one of the main things that we're getting wrong is that we're doing all this research, we're coming up with all these ideas, but I don't think that we're making it sufficiently available to ordinary patients. I think that the costs of drugs and treatments are far too high. And I know for a fact that my doctor at the Moffitt, he told me that he's got a number of patients who would be on the drugs that I'm on if only they could afford it, but they can't afford it. And I think that a few weeks ago I was involved in a bit of a TV flyer for the Men's Health Forum, which was taking place on a Saturday, sponsored by the Moffitt, and the idea was to bring men who are either uninsured or underinsured, and they got screenings for eyes and teeth and hearing and all sorts of things, and they also got vouchers for a prostate cancer screening at the Moffitt. But my point is that if you're going to go to a group who are not able to afford insurance, and you give them a screening, and then they can't afford the treatment, it seems to me a bit of a dichotomy there. It seems, why do that in the first place if you're going to turn around and say you can't have the right treatment because you can't afford it? And the background, I think, to that is that I was reading a study in the paper the other day which said that 50% of Americans could not find $500 in case of emergency. And that's,
I think that was an Atlantic article.
it might have been.
Yeah. But let me take you one because I agree that's an issue, but I'm also interested in your pathway in this because it's so interesting to me. I've been reading a little bit about adaptive therapy, which is a very different therapy than many people receive for prostate cancer. It's one, and I may butcher this, and I apologize for those who are real experts, that actually doesn't go after and kill the cancer, it sort of manages the cancer, and it sort of doesn't kill everything to get to not allow the cells to mutate and survive the treatment, if you will, and it sort of goes on. And I'm interested when you're in that, and both of you would be interested, is when you're in something that's experimental, because part of what we're talking a little bit today is advances in technology, not just advances in community, but advances in technology. How do you feel? Did you feel comfortable going into something that was that untried or that was just new?
To be honest, you're making it sound very sort of highbrow, very sort of dramatic.
It's dramatic to me.
You know, well, yeah, but I mean, I didn't feel that at all. I was told that we think it would be a good idea, and it seemed rational to me. If you're going to give, we all know what's happened with antibiotics in general. You know, people have used them so frequently, they've misused them so frequently, that now a lot of our antibiotics don't do any good at all. So I thought, well, what they're suggesting is that instead of taking this drug called Zytiga, which I now take, hitherto, once you started on this drug, you stayed on it. You took it every month, come rain or come shine. This adaptive therapy now is that I take the drug until my PSA, which is the prostate-specific antigen, and is a measure of, well, I like to think it's a measure of how much cancer you've got in the prostate, but doubtless some doctors here will tell me that's totally wrong. I felt that they said that what we're going to do is we're going to wait until your PSA comes right down to 1, and then we're going to take you off this drug, and we're going to wait until on a monthly basis we check your PSA, and we find out that it's gone to 15 or more.
Right.
And in that case, you go back on to the Zytiga until once again it comes down, and you just sort of repeat this cycle. And from a simple layman's point of view, and thinking of the antibiotic analogy, seemed like quite a good idea that the less chance you get the cancer to see what's going on with this new drug and be able to develop its own defense mechanisms to it, it might be sort of a pretty good idea to try it this way. So for me, there was no issue at all about sort of just going on to it. I think it was, in many ways, rather taken for granted. That's what I do.
Well, I was fascinated by your comments where you said that you've never felt ill, you've never had ill effects, you haven't had that, and that's not how I think many of us have heard those with cancer. Madison, you had to come out of school for a while, I understand. And I guess that really asked me, the same question, the networks. We've been talking a lot about human networks. How do you feel young people who haven't had, do you think they understand what you've gone through? Do you think they need to understand what you've gone through?
I don't think that they do. I think I had a lot of friends actually who just flat out said, I don't really know how to handle this, so I'm going to kind of step back.
They've told you they're going to step back from you because...
that they would just pray from afar, and that was that, just because people don't understand. So I think that it is something with Spark the Way that I eventually want to start educating high schoolers and college kids, because it's something that's becoming more prevalent. You've got a young adult every 8 minutes getting diagnosed with cancer, and to have a lot of people, to have someone go into it as unequipped as I was, is something that I just don't want to happen in the world anymore. I just kind of want to equip them.
Is there opportunity for intergenerational connections between communities with cancer?
Yes. I think because there's so many different seasons of life that you go through. The young adult age is 18 to 39. So there's so many different seasons of life that you go through with that, from graduating college to getting married to having your first baby to all the things. So we actually have a lot of different, our VP is actually, I think she's 35, has 2 kids and so we bring different people and different age ranges then to kind of communicate better with and to connect better with the people in different seasons.
And how are you dealing with your seasons?
I honestly thought that once I was put in remission that it would be a breeze, but this has been a whole other fight on its own to get back to normal. I try to get back into school, and there's a lot of effects that chemo has on the brain once you go back. I can't remember anything to save my life. I will kind of check out, like I'll get halfway through an idea and wait, what was I talking about? So there are a lot of things I've had to go
You're doing
through,
great,
brain
by the
therapy.
way. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I have finished
Yeah.
all my sentences, which is a huge plus right now. So I've gone through like brain therapy, and then that whole time I was in menopause, we had put my eggs to sleep. So there's a whole lot of crazy hormonal things coming out of that. So there's just a fight to get back to normal that nobody tells you about after you get out of it. So.
Robert, did you ever feel, I mean, I've had, as we discussed on the phone yesterday, family members who went through this and went through similar feelings. They're older than Madison, but yet felt set aside from society, felt abnormal. I get the sense that you're just kind of a cool dude who can take anything on.
I'm a 74-year-old.
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
dude.
Was there any as you look at it, because I think part of the question is what lessons can we learn, ought we to learn from, your experience and journey here for others in kind of tackling this?
That's really rather difficult. As I say, I've never felt ill. I didn't have any symptoms that I knew of prostate cancer. That's probably why when I had finally had a screening, my PSA was at 76, which is actually quite high considering that it's supposed to be something less than 4. It was fairly advanced, it was fairly aggressive. I was just surprised. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't really even sort of upset. I was just surprised that it was like that and that I'd got prostate cancer. Actually, my wife was with me when I discovered it at the specialists, when he examined me as well and said, well, I've got to have some biopsies done as well, but I'm pretty sure you've got prostate cancer. And at that, my wife sort of fell over, and so he had to spend the next 10 minutes looking after her rather than me. And then I told my sons, look, I think we've got to expect that this thing being so aggressive, and I've had it so long, and the PSA is so high, I think we've got to expect that this has progressed elsewhere in my body. And I think when I have the scans done, we're going to find that that's what's happened. As it happened, I did have the scans done. I went back to my doctor, and he went through the list of these results, and he kept saying, no, this is clear, no, the bones are clear, no, the lymph node. And we kept on saying, but. And he said, no buts, you're clear, apart from the prostate. And he said, actually, you're not clear. He said, it has spread, but it's so small that we can't pick it up. So my wife and I, we actually jumped up out of our chairs in his office, and we embraced each other, and we gave each other a big kiss. And we did that all the way to the car park, and then we got to, we were taking a DVD back to Blockbuster. It was slightly overdue. So I went into Blockbuster, which got one of those big plate glass windows in the front. And I went in, my wife waited outside, I gave him I said, how much is that fine? He said, it's only a day or two. He said, don't worry about it. So I said, oh, okay, thank you. So I walked outside, and my wife and I again gave ourselves a big hug and a kiss, and then I whispered in her ear.
Because you didn't get fined?
Well, exactly. I whispered in her ear, I bet that chap in there thinks we're funny. All this embracement and excitement over missing out on $1 fine.
That's great. And what I like is kind of know a little bit about your story, which you've thankfully shared publicly in PBS and other places. But I like this line when you ask the daughter, "How will I know if it's working?"
Oh.
You asked.
Oh, yes. I did ask the doctor. I said, this is a little bit morbid, perhaps, but it suits my sense of humour. I said, how will I know that this drug is working? And he said, well, you'll still be alive.
Can I ask you both, we're down in Tampa, and I just driving here saw so many medical facilities, so many screening centers, and maybe it's just an unusual road, or maybe it's just everywhere in Florida. I don't know.
Everywhere.
But I feel like you're pretty well equipped here on the science, the screening, the doctors. At least that's my sense from just having arrived here this morning. But coming again and sort of looking at aging in place and communities, what would be the kinds of things, if we were going to do this 4 or 5 years from now, this forum, do you think it would be nice to have achieved, either for people with cancer at a young age, or for elder care, people aging in place, many of your friends, and I'm sure you've got friends in your community. What kinds of things would we need to get right, both in treating the patient, but also connecting all of us better? Madison?
I would say it just comes back to the appointments. I think back to one of the hardest parts of my cancer was the appointments, going in there and just, there needs to be some kind of bridge or some kind of connection between
Appointments with
the oncologist.
Okay.
So there needs to be some kind of just better communication between a 20-year-old patient and an oncologist. I think kind of and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think that they kind of have this mindset of, well, this, like, I had to tell them this, I had to tell them this, but I think there needs to be a little bit more like grace or understanding when it comes to an 18-year-old walking in the room or a 20-year-old walking in the room, that we're kind of dumb in that category, and we don't know a lot going into it.
So are you telling me that the oncologist himself or herself is not able to kind of connect with a 20-year-old? So is there sort of a specialty needs for the younger generation?
Well, and I say this, and my oncologist I love that man. I think he's awesome. So it's not anything on my oncologist at all, but just to have someone in there to kind of better explain, or maybe kind of translate. That was kind of what my stepdad did for me. He translated for my oncologist. We would leave the room, and he'd be like, all right, Madison, this is what he said, and kind of give it to me in my terms. So just to maybe have someone in there in that room as a translator, if you will.
You were telling me Spark the Way is mostly you running it all, and that you've just begun to kind of set up a board of directors that's more stable now, and you're going to try to begin scaling this. So tell us a little bit about where Spark the Way is going.
So we want to grow our mentor base. Right now we have 5 mentors, and then the goal for those mentors is that if they're in the same area, that they can do the appointments and everything with their patient. They just kind of come in and walk with them through it. But in the long run, our dream is to have Spark the Way in, like, the program in cancer centers all over the world, so that young adults have a place to come in. Moffitt's done a great job, actually, with their young adult room. I think that is the coolest room. You walk in and you feel like you're in a dorm room or something. It's a very cool room. So something like that is what we want to do, just to have that program available to the young adults, that when they're between 18 and 39 and they're walking into a cancer center going, what am I doing here? There's a resource that can be handed to them that says, hey, we want to help you, we want to give you answers, we want to equip you with the things to kind of brace yourself for, but also be ready for, and ways to just stay on top of it and walk through it boldly and fearlessly.
I think that's right, but still for me, I'm of that generation, and there may be some out there who are of a similar generation who, I think particularly for the male, I still think there's a big inhibition in sort of going to a doctor, and particularly sort of subjecting yourself to examinations that you'd really rather not know about. I guess it's probably changing for younger people, but certainly I think a lot of it, excuse me, is that the problem is that men aren't women. I can imagine that...
Did you just say the problem is men aren't women?
Yeah.
Yeah, just want to make sure I heard that right. Okay.
in the sense that, you know, a lot of women go through childbirth. And I can't imagine that there's anything much more likely to break down any inhibitions you've got than having a baby with all these people poking about at you and doing all these dreadful things. But of course, a male doesn't have that. He hasn't got that experience. And so everything is much more of, you know, well, I'd sooner, if there's something wrong, I'd sooner not know. And I still think that's my best friend in England. He died because even after he started passing blood, he still wouldn't go to a doctor. Of course, in England, it was much more difficult because, unlike, as you say, here we've got wall-to-wall doctors and blood clinics and hospitals and X-ray places, all this sort of stuff. In England, of course, you don't have that. It's you've probably got to wait for 6 months to get a CAT scan, and you've then got to probably travel 100 miles to go somewhere to actually get it done. So I think that's another inhibiting factor. But here, really, there's no excuse. There are all these places, but once again, we can come back down to cost. And, you know, this Zytiga that I take, the first, there's this, in insurance, there's this thing called a donut hole. Some of you probably know about that, but my first 1 month's supply costs me in copay $2,700. And then every month after that, because I've gone straight, with that sort of price, I've gone straight through the donut hole and I've come out the other side. But even so, every month after that for the rest of the year, and of course it starts all over again the following year, every month costs $400. So we're talking...
So 2,700 is on the front end.
27 is the
And then
first
it's-
month. Yeah, because that's the thing that you've got to get through the donut hole.
So, Robert, I take it, did you know, you used to be from Oklahoma. No, I'm just joking.
Yes.
You know, that wonderful accent. But you worked for Shell, I understand. You've been all around the world. Have you seen, in your experience, other communities kind of get that better? I mean, I'm sort of interested in this tension over price and innovation, community building, how to get that equation right. And I'm wondering if there are other models in your experience, your life experience, that you've seen have...
Not really. Most of the places I worked were oil and gas exploration places, which were even worse than Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's a great place, just
yes,
for the record.
Yes, of course it is.
Yeah.
But no, there wasn't really. I think that's probably one of the reasons that I left it so long, didn't find out, because there was no sort of facilities out there of any sort. In places like Nigeria, and I had 4.5 years in Damascus. You know, there just wasn't that sort of...
And Madison, just before we go to the audience, how does the economics, I mean, one of the things we know just from health insurance in general is that young people tend not to want to get insured. They're healthy and, you know, running around all around. And you know, one of the big controversies in health insurance is the way to bring everyone into the system so that you have, to a certain degree, everyone there, so to some degree, the younger generation is subsidizing the elder generation. But I'm interested in the economics of someone who has something like you did, whether or not that is a financial hit that's just unexpected. And from your experience with other young people out there, I know you had your stepdad,
Yeah.
but how do they see that economic hit?
Oh gosh. I mean, you're kind of in the middle of paying for school, right? You're in the middle of, if you just had a baby, the newborn, the wedding, whatever. So to have this cancer hit on top of it is, I mean, it's a hard one. I had to drain my savings to stay in the apartment that I had, and even coming out of it, now I'm struggling for school money, you know, and so it's kind of a lasting thing too, because it's a lot. It takes a lot, and I was super blessed. My parents had me on their insurance at the time, but in working with young adult fighters now, I mean, we've got people that we're calling to go ahead and pay for their scans because they can't afford their scans. And these scans are the ones that determine whether or not their cancer is still there or not. But because they've been totally drained of all the money that they had going into their cancer fight, they don't have a lot to maintain it afterwards. So we're trying to fill that hole too, with Spark the Way, just trying to cover as many scans and things like that as we can.
Yes.
Because you're right, I think at this point we take the lowest insurance that we can, if any at all, because we're just getting on our feet, just starting our careers. And it's just something that's not anticipated or expected.
Well, thank you for that. Let me open the floor to questions, comments for Madison and Robert. Yes, hi, right here. And you look so happy, by the way.
Yes, I'm Deborah Dawes. I'm an associate professor at the School of Aging Studies at University of South Florida across the street. I do research in this area, particularly with the hospices in the Tampa Bay community, advanced care planning, end-of-life decision-making. I'm on the board of the Pulse in Florida. This has been a great event, but one topic I haven't heard addressed from any of the panels, survivors, is how has hospice been part of your cancer care or the advanced care planning, end-of-life decision-making? How have the oncologists or the physicians, other healthcare providers you've worked with as cancer survivors happened?
So I'm going to ask a favor. The acoustics in this room are not brilliant, and I could not hear. How have oncologists done what?
Well, how have you interacted with any healthcare providers that you've encountered in terms of end-of-life decision-making?
Thank you.
The suggestion of how hospice can be part of your cancer care treatment.
Right, and I'll certainly bring that up in the next panel as well. But in terms of decisions on cost, life planning, I was going to actually talk about Dr. Len about this, who said sometimes patients will agree not to be treated, and it's one of these interesting questions. It's sensitive, but I don't know. Have either of you been in conversations with your oncologists over hard choices? And is that a fair way to encapsulate hard choices, whether financial or life, quality of life?
Every time I checked into Moffitt, so I would go in and check in for 7 days at a time and then have 2 weeks off, check in for 7 days. So I kind of went in this pattern for 6 months. Every time I checked in, they would send a social worker or someone in there to come in and talk to me and kind of go over, all right, we need to talk about life insurance, we need to talk about, and just kind of go through all of the hard things. Talk about financially what it looks like and everything.
So they were pretty good at that. Robert?
Very good.
Yeah. No, I don't think there have been for me. I mean, I'm lucky enough that although I don't like paying that sort of money, I can actually afford to do so. But as my oncologist said to me, there are plenty of people who are not in that position. And as I said earlier, it's meant that they can't offer them the treatment that I'm getting because they literally can't afford it. So they do have a lot of hard choices. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, it comes down to, are you prepared to sort of downsize your home or something? Or have some way that you can raise the money to be able to afford these things. But I'm quite sure the answer for many people is that no, we can't raise that money, and so we'll have to forego that treatment.
I would also say, just in the spirit of spreading resources, and Dr. Len Lichtenfeld, who was here before, on his blog, he actually addresses that and has a story about these conversations over hard choices. So I read it this morning, so it's something you might want to take a look at. Other comments or questions? Yes, right up in front here. We have a... Good morning, who are you?
My name is Katie. I'm an intern for the American Lung Association right now, and I'm graduating from USF this semester. Cool. I wanted to know what's next for you in your Spark the Way movement.
Sure.
What's next for you in the...
With her Spark the Way.
Oh, great.
So right now we're building up the mentors, kind of revamping the website so we can get our mentors and get our board up there.
What's the website address?
www.sparktheway.org.
Great.
So right now we're just in a rebuild process. We're getting these mentors, getting the board, and we have our 3rd annual Ignite the Light Gala coming up in September 23rd, at the Tampa Bay Garden Club if you want to come. And so that's kind of short term, what's going on the board, the mentors and the gala. Long term, we are looking into connecting with more hospitals. We have mentors that are in other states who have gotten their treatments done in other states. So the goal with them is to kind of use them as a way in as well, like to their hospitals and everything. So the goal just in the next 5 years is to get into another 50 hospitals. Really well.
The question was, how are you doing in Tampa? Yes. How are you doing in Tampa?
Great.
And could you be doing better?
We could be doing better, and I think with
Yeah.
it could always be doing better.
Yeah.
Especially now with this board in place, like you said, up until now, it really has just been me, and then I realized, oh, wait, I actually want this to be huge, and I want this to go somewhere and be so much bigger than just what I can do. So with this board, we really plan on getting further in Tampa, but right now we're in like Florida Cancer Center, Florida Cancer Specialists, Moffitt, Meese over in Countryside, and Dunedin.
And are you looking for more allies?
Yes,
This
all
is a
the
good
time.
room for allies,
All the
so
time.
I hope
Yeah.
they'll check her out. Go to sparktheway.org.
Absolutely.
I want to thank Robert Butler and Madison Miller for sharing their personal stories and giving us a sense of what living like with this could be. And I know, Robert, you want to get back to kissing and hugging your wife. Cool.
Yeah.
And when is the gala?
September 23rd.
Great, not too long away. We have a lot
Yep.
coming up September. It's April 25th, folks. It's going to be September
coming.
tomorrow.
It's
But
coming.
thank you very much. Again, Meredith Miller, Robert
Thank you.
Butler, thank you
Thanks
so much.
for having
Thank you,
us.
guys.